many people, Mark Andreessen, as a matter of fact, who's the founder of A16Z, one of the best VCs in the world, famously, or one of the things he said was that entrepreneurs are actually extremely creative people in general. And that's why they struggle to work in the mold of traditional life, or that's why they struggle to fit in the mold of a traditional life, the white picket fence or working for a corporate after studying, because the way they see the world is much more like an artist, like a musician or a painter, over a traditional. And I could definitely feel that as well. I wouldn't do very well in a corporate, in a normal business. It'd be very difficult for me to kind of operate within those parameters, within that box. So I think creativity is extremely important, because if you are not able to synthesize a lot of data and come up with a novel solution, you're not going to create a 0 to 1 company.
Hi everybody, my name is Maynard again and welcome to our show. Today we have the pleasure and the privilege to have on interview Louis Neil Korsten. Louis is CEO and founder of Bookt app. He is actually busy building Bookt at the moment. It's an EdTech startup. They are transforming how organizations approach learning and development, especially in terms of reading. So if you're a bookworm or if you like reading, you'll definitely appreciate this interview. Louis' focus is on assisting organizations in cultivating a sustainable reading culture. Their platform enables teams to embark on collaborative reading courses together. Louis and the team is transforming reading across a structured but bite-sized gamified journey to help individuals and the collective, companies, teams, people that read together, build those lasting reading habits and just learn a lot in the process. Just a side note, I've been on the app. If you haven't downloaded or used Bookt before, I can definitely recommend it. I was part of the reading journey that read through Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell, and it was super informative. And you get to read with other people. And Louis and the team built all of that, and they're still building it. Louis and the team's emphasis is on social learning and engagement. So learning together and reading along with other people. And it helps organizations establish a shared language and foster a robust culture, to which I can definitely attest, especially where I work as well. So Bookt has partnered with some of the world's biggest publishers. You'll definitely kind of find the book you're looking for on the platform. And so all the reading is done through our app. And then Louis, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Thanks for taking the time to come and talk with us about what you're building and doing out in the world.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate it. I think we can chat about a commission structure after this. I don't think
Oh my goodness.
Explain Bookt better.
I earn the commission. No, definitely. I'm 100% in for that, but I'll do it for free. I believe in the platform so much. It's just such a great tool for me, not just in my own learning journey, but also people I work with. But then I think just to close off this short but informative introduction, there was a quote. You put a quote on your LinkedIn profile, and I captured it off of there. It's Albert Einstein, which says that if at first the idea is not absurd, then there will be no hope for it, which doesn't make sense. As far as conventional wisdom is concerned, at least in the business world. So why don't we start off with that? Talk us through, why is that something that you resonated with? And why do you think it's only the absurd ideas that actually end up making it in the world?
So I think there's two pieces of text, or one video, one text I'll maybe use in answering this. The first is the book 0 to 1. And the second is actually a video I watched from the founder of Weebly. So Weebly was the first, call it, drag and drop website builder. They sold to Squarespace many years ago. Now, what was interesting, the guy from Weebly, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was the founder, the CEO. Now, he said what was really interesting in that video was that if everyone told him it was a stupid idea until the day it wasn't. And it's not only him that said that. Almost every single massive tech founder says everyone tells them it's a stupid idea until the day it isn't. It's that whole, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And the reason I mentioned 0 to 1 is because, I think you can be successful with many ideas, not just absurd ones or novel ones. But then that whole idea of 0 to 1 and 1 to 100 comes in, where Peter Thiel, who's the author of 0 to 1, says, Your absurd ideas are usually your 0 to 1. Taking an idea, something that doesn't exist, zero, nothing, and actually creating something from it. Where the ideas where you're going 1 to 100, those are more the conventional business ideas. Both are very important, absolutely. But the 1 to 100 ideas is the less, there's a formula for it. You'll usually see your private equity guys love the 1 to 100 business ideas. They put in a CEO who has a financial background, and it's a formula, and he follows it, and they grow 10% year over year, and that's great. That's a business, that's fantastic. But the other side of the coin, the 0 to 1, that's where you kind of need the dreamers, the guys and girls who are willing to step outside of the conventions of, what's perceived as a normal career, a normal idea, etc. So that quote from Einstein really stuck with me, because obviously many of his ideas were absolutely insane when he first proposed them. But then it took a little while and people realized, okay, actually, maybe they aren't that absurd. And so there's no better person to state something like that for me than Einstein himself, where I think all of his ideas, people fought against it. He's probably single-handedly the most responsible for advancing science in the quickest period of time of all the physicists. Now, I love Feynman, all of those guys, but Einstein probably advanced science the quickest. And that's because he was willing to accept or actually consider absurd ideas. And that for me it kind of resonated very much, is when, you're looking the other way, not the way society wants you to look the other way. And the people will tell you it's a bit of a stupid idea, or it doesn't make sense, or it's absurd. So that's kind of why that quote resonated with me quite a bit.
All right, that makes sense. Deep down, I can deeply resonate with that. Although sometimes it's difficult to swim against the stream, especially in an industry as vast and as established as yours, in the tech space, in the learning space. So, why don't you just quickly talk us through, for those that don't know, what is it that you're building in the world? How did it come to be? Talk us through a little bit your journey leading up to this point. Start wherever you want, but talk us through, how did you come to this exact point in your life where you're building this incredible platform, where you creating avenues for people to learn through tech and business? Yeah, give us a little bit an idea, an overview of your journey so far.
I think what I'll do is maybe start from just before I started studying, because I think my background kind of is quite important context of Bookt. And not only my background, my co-founder Warren, his background as well. So the two of us started Bookt about 3 years ago, but I'll get to that in a second. So I attended Pretoria Boys High School. I wasn't a model student, I can tell you that. I really wasn't a model student. Anyway, after high school, I did not know what I wanted to study. I don't know what I wanted to do with my life. I don't have the typical entrepreneurial story of, by the age of 14, I had sold 3 businesses and was a master negotiator. No, not even remotely close. I was very naughty at the age of 14, actually. So for me, I didn't have the traditional route, although I think many entrepreneurs who kind of come around with the story of, no, I've been in entrepreneurship since I was 6 years old. There's a lot of fluff to many of those stories, but regardless, after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in a very fortunate position where my mom was or is a professor at the University of Pretoria, and that actually means I could study for free. So that is a massive advantage and benefit I had, and a privilege, truth be told. I was immensely privileged to have that opportunity to kind of be able to study whatever I want, and not have my parents actually worry about the costs and so on. So after high school, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was pretty good with numbers. I was good with accounting. So I thought, well, I know CAs make a lot of money. Let me go down that route. But I was also interested in kind of the legal side of things. But I thought, let me start with a BCom. So I started with a BCom with a focus in tax and accounting. And a little while into it, I realized this is not for me. I really am not enjoying myself. No, I don't mean any offense to the accountants and the CAs out there, but it was not an industry for me. So I always knew I enjoyed the gray areas of life, negotiation, finding solutions to problems that weren't necessarily black and white. And that, arises quite a lot in law. You may think law is very black and white, but there's a lot of gray in it. And
Yes.
only through understanding the gray areas do we get to the black and white. That's how legislation evolves. That's how the Constitution evolves. So I then finished the BCom and did the LLB. So studied law. A little while into that, I realized, well, this is also not for me. I'm not enjoying this as much as I thought I did. So I've always had an interest in technology, in tech, programming as a whole. So I thought, well, okay, this will be my third and my last degree I studied. So then I started a BSc Computer Science. And what's quite funny is, so I studied the LLB and the BCom simultaneously. And then in my third year of the LLB, I just finished my BCom. So I was just studying the LLB. And I wanted to study the BCom, the computer science, but Tux said there's no ways I'm studying the computer science as well. Not allowed to study 2 degrees at the same time. So I applied to study at Potch at the University of Northwest. Obviously didn't tell them I was studying another degree. They accepted me. I started studying then, did the BCom, the computer science and LLB simultaneously, finished the LLB and then finished the computer science. But then throughout that long period of studying, so that's 6 years I studied on those 3 degrees. So I was called a professional student, if you will. Now, throughout that time, I've always had a massive passion for education. Knowledge as a whole has been something that's always been fascinating to me. And I think a big reason why I was always uncomfortable at universities, because truth be told, I did not think they were effective. I thought they were extremely ineffective. I didn't think what they would teach. As a matter of fact, I could probably learn more in a 6-month online course than what I did at my entire 3-year computer science degree. Now, I know universities will come after me for saying this, but that's just my opinion and that's how I saw it. So, from I think in grade 11 or 12, I started tutoring on the side, math, physics, and accounting. So I've always had a massive passion for education and educating others. So that was really, really important to me. And then I can't remember what year it was. Somewhere in the LLB degree, me and Warren, actually, my now co-founder, we've been friends forever. We went to the same primary school. We then ran a tutoring company. So we had quite a few tutors working for us. The tutoring company was called Show Me Tutors. And the company as a whole had a focus on math, physics, IT, and accounting. And we tutored many kids in Pretoria, Joburg, and Cape Town, and many tutors working for us. And that's where Warren and I really started building quite a bit of a relationship in terms of running a business together, understanding one another. And I'll get to kind of that dynamic because I think that's something many entrepreneurs wonder about is a co-founder. How do you do it? Who do you work with, etc.? And I have a lot of thoughts around that because me and Warren have spoken a lot about that. That was our first exposure working together. And about a year after him and I embarked on the tutoring company, that journey, I actually had the idea for Bookt. Now, just very briefly, funny enough, it was actually 0 to 1 that gave me the idea in the first place. I finished reading 0 to 1 and realized I probably learned more practical business knowledge from this small book than 2 modules at my BCom degree, which just, again, goes to show how much I think a university degree actually ends up teaching you. But then it started bothering me because at that stage, I was still very much in the mind of after studying, I need to go get a job. I need to go apply to work at wherever, send them my CV, etc. And realize that I can go read 50 of these business books and they'll probably teach me more than my entire degree, but I can't prove I've read them. That knowledge isn't certified. I don't get that same piece of paper at the end. So that's where the idea for Bookt initially was born, was nonfiction books provide such a phenomenal form. There's such a phenomenal form of education. There's such a wealth of knowledge contained there. I mean, when you're reading a nonfiction book, you're learning from literally an industry expert. But you can read as many books as you want on marketing or business or whatever it may be. It's not going to help you get a job. It's not certifiable. You can't put it on your CV. You can't prove you've gained that knowledge. And that's where Bookt started was, education is so important to me. And I see a problem that non-fiction books, which are one of the best forms of education, in my opinion, it's not recognized in the industry. It's not recognized in practice, and you can't actually use it. It provides you with no tangible benefit. And that's where Bookt started, was, let's go certify the knowledge you get from reading. So I did my market research, tested the idea against a few people, etc., put together a pitch deck, and I actually called Warren up and I pitched him the idea. I said, Warren, what do you think? Are you keen to do this? And he fortunately said yes. He actually quit his job at our insurance, and the two of us started Bookt together. And that's where the idea started, but it's obviously been about 3 years since that first initial idea. And Maynard, I can't explain to you how much different the company and the application looks today than what it did the very first time we started.
Of course.
I remember still drawing pictures on a piece of paper as to what I think the app should look like. And then we actually raised a round of funding with my hand-drawn pictures, where I would sit there at, I think it was in Sandton, at a restaurant, Tasha's, obviously Tasha's. We were at Tasha's, and I'm sitting there showing these investors, and this is what the app's going to look like. It's going to be incredible. They said, how are you going to build it? Do you know how to program? I said, yes. Didn't know how to do any programming. And then they actually gave us the investment. I then did a little Udemy course for 2 months to teach myself how to do software development. Started the programming on that initial kind of, call it a proof of concept. And then that's how we kind of got kickstarted. That's how the very initial idea got started. That's where we got our first traction. So we developed that very initial platform where we actually got authors and the university lecturers to come and read a book. Obviously, an author doesn't need to read their own book, but read a book, create a quiz based on the book. And then the whole idea was people would read a book in their own time, would come onto the platform, write the quiz, and if they pass it, they get a certificate, a verifiable certificate. They can put that on their LinkedIn, put that on their CV, etc. They can prove they've gained that knowledge. So that's where the idea started, and that was the very first iteration of Bookt. The app looked terrible, very ugly. I always tell people I can program, I'm not a programmer. So you can imagine what that application looked like. And something else that we found out very early on was authors actually make terrible quizzes. Most authors don't know their books as well as they think they do. As a matter of fact, bless him, he'll actually forgive me for telling the story. He is actually one of our investors now as well. But we had an author write the quiz that we set up for his own book, and he couldn't pass it. So
oh, no.
That's one of my favorite stories.
All right. But if I can... sorry, go ahead.
No, that was just kind of the origins of Bookt. I think there's a little bit more up to where we got to this point, but that's probably the meat of a conversation, I suppose.
Yes. So I'm super interested in... you are I don't know if you know this, but you are the proverbial raise funds for a tech startup in a random restaurant on the back of a napkin and just get the skills afterwards and figure out how to do it afterwards. It's very cowboy tech, early Silicon Valley stuff, which I think is so great because in South Africa, that's kind of where we are now. And it is so inspiring to hear young guys like yourself take the bull by the horns and just build the things that you're dreaming of, not waiting for either getting that formal education or having all the money in the bank. And super inspiring, I must tell you, to see how things fall in place once you take that first step and once you start taking action. For me, at least, that's super inspiring. I'm sure for other people listening as well. I'm intrigued by what you talk about, the gray areas of life. So you would think in like the life of a coder, of a finance-minded person, a legal thinker, a businessman and an entrepreneur, that things would be kind of black and white. But I mean, the more I talk with you and the more I bump up against the platform and the work you're doing, I'm actually realizing this is quite a creative effort. This is something that is born from the heart. It's being made by hand. It's a work of love. And in that instance, probably there is a lot of gray areas. So, I mean, here's my question for you and for your team and maybe just for you. What has been some of the tensions and the challenges and some of the things that you thought that would be easy, but it proved to be way more difficult than you probably imagined it would ever be? Can you share some of those on your journey?
Well, I think the first thing is I thought starting a tech company would be way easier than it actually is. So for starters, that blew me away. But I think in terms of, And I always like to draw a distinction between, and this is quite important for me at least, entrepreneurship and business, entrepreneur and a businessman. It's the same concept of 0 to 1 and 1 to 100. If I start a business selling shoes, there are ways to take it from a 0 to 1 approach, like Drip and companies like that, but then they focus on the brand and the channels, and that's very innovative. But generally, you have businesses you can run, an ice cream shop where there's a formula and you can apply the formula. It's a little bit more black and white. But in terms of entrepreneurship, tech companies, I'm going to speak a lot about tech because that's obviously the industry I'm in, but
yes,
entrepreneurship, tech companies in general are almost completely grey. And that, I think, is the same for many creatives, artists, musicians. There's almost no black and white in their life. And many people, Mark Andreessen, as a matter of fact, who's the founder of A16Z, one of the best VCs in the world, famously, or one of the things he said was that entrepreneurs are actually extremely creative people in general. And that's why they struggle to work in the mold of traditional life, or that's why they struggle to fit in the mold of a traditional life, the white picket fence, or working for a corporate after studying, because the way they see the world is much more like an artist, like a musician or a painter, over a traditional, So, and I could definitely feel that as well. I wouldn't do very well in a corporate, in a normal business. It'd be very difficult for me to kind of operate within those parameters, within that box. So I think creativity is extremely important, because if you are not able to synthesize a lot of data and come up with a novel solution, you're not going to create a 0 to 1 company, or you're not going to create a brand new solution that no one's ever seen. And that's essentially what all artists, all creatives do, is they take a lot of learning or a lot of data, synthesize it to come up with a novel solution or a novel song. I mean, there's obviously, there's no such thing as a new idea, or there's no such thing as a creative idea. I think it's a new idea. And the whole basis behind that is that, all art has been inspired from something preceding it. And the same with entrepreneurship. But the thing is, if you don't continuously upskill yourself or learn or educate or broaden your knowledge base, how on earth are you going to take existing data and synthesize a new solution? Same with an artist, same with a musician. If they're not constantly exposed to music, exposed to, I think Andreessen also spoke about the role of suffering or hardship in a creative's life, how important that is to actually drive their purpose, then how do you expect to come up with a new solution? So I think, maybe just to the challenges concept or part of your question, the biggest challenge for me has been navigating the gray. Because what I realized about entrepreneurship is it's literally all gray. There's no black and white ever. There's a lot of data used, but it's all gray. And I believe it's most likely the same for all creatives. Navigating that constant gray is extremely difficult because it's very uncertain. And it takes a very interesting type of person to be able to live with extreme uncertainty day in and day out. I mean, I can't tell you where I'm going to live in 3 years from now. Maybe it's Silicon Valley, maybe it's Europe. I have no idea. You know how difficult that is to form a stable relationship with a romantic partner, or commit to buying a house, etc. So just living in extreme uncertainty in that gray area is probably the most difficult thing, in all honesty, because it takes a very, very high degree of resilience to continue through that. So that at least is my personal view on kind of the most difficult about entrepreneurship, is the gray.
So tell me,
that is there.
Of course, I can definitely understand that, and living with that uncertainty, especially when you're doing something that has never been done before. There is no existing infrastructure, financially, culturally, creatively, for you to find security in when you're doing something that has never been done before. And with that comes uncertainty. I'm not kind of just processing for myself what I'm hearing you saying. And then the need for resilience, personal resilience, to say, this is the world that I want to operate in. I'm not going to fit in where people are only rehashing and regurgitating existing ideas. I want to give my life for something that is completely new. If I don't do it, I won't forgive myself. I'd rather face the risk of uncertainty, building something that has never been done before. I totally get it. But then, of course, challenges and hardship, suffering, as you duly mentioned, probably isn't the only part of the deal. So, what has been some of the incredible opportunities that you have come your way that you maybe also didn't anticipate, or things that when you think back on those things, you would think, oh my goodness, I couldn't have designed this better even if I had the opportunity? Talk us through some of those high points the past couple of years, even amidst this world of gray and uncertainty. What has been some of the positives?
I think this may sound like a weird answer, but the uncertainty, that gray area, the suffering aspect is one of the positives, because that forces you to grow and change in a way that no other industry would. And I'm very, very grateful for that, because it's, these last couple of years I've had to grow in all aspects so unbelievably quickly to stay ahead
Yes.
and actually keep moving forward. I know I wouldn't have grown this much in any other industry if I just gone and worked for a corporate. So that for me is probably the highest point, is understanding, but it does require a very high degree of self-awareness to understand that all of this uncertainty, suffering, and hardship is actually a very positive thing, because you come out the other side a much, much, much stronger person. One of my favorite books actually is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, where he speaks about his time in the concentration camps in World War II, where one of his theories, or one thing he talks about, is that the meaning of life is suffering, because, that really gives you an opportunity to grow. And the self-awareness you need to develop to understand that is very, very important. I mean, I was very recently in Auschwitz, actually. I saw Auschwitz for myself, and Auschwitz and Birkenau, and I actually walked along that train track. And just the perspective that gives you is very difficult to put it into words. So this may sound very weird, but the thing I'm most grateful for is the uncertainty and the hardship over the last couple of years. And I think in terms of a more vanilla answer, obviously with entrepreneurship, it's a different lifestyle. There's very highs, and you get highs and lows, but the highs are extremely high and the lows are very, very low. But boy, when you have one of the highs, I can't tell you, it's like nothing else you'll experience. The satisfaction, the sense of accomplishment, the people you end up meeting. I think the people I've met over these last 3 years are, some of the coolest people I can, it's difficult for me to put into words the characters you end up meeting in this line of work. So that's been an absolute high. The traveling that has opened up for me, being able to see most of Europe, in meeting different people, all of that, absolutely phenomenal. So in terms of, you have what I actually think was the best thing, and that's kind of the suffering aspect, the gray area. And in terms of the more vanilla side of things, the people you meet and the freedom you have is incredible. That's definitely some of the high points.
That makes 100% sense to me. I must tell you honestly, I'm impressed by how you keep referencing the books you've read. And this is just a side note. I mean, this is 100% the industry you're in, but it is super interesting to see how you're eating your own dog food when it comes to actually learning from things that you read. It hasn't been often in my life, or it isn't a regular occurrence, let me rather say that, to read through a whole 250-page manuscript and being able to retain something. And now I don't want to attribute this necessarily to the tech you've created or the app or Bookt or whatever it is, but it is super inspiring to see you quoting Peter Thiel, you quoting Viktor Frankl, seeing that some of these wisdoms or some of these writings have in fact found a place in your heart and in your mind, and it informs how you just engage with the world. Am I right in saying that, or how would you put it?
No, you're absolutely 100% right. And I think, I could go on about books and the value of books, and they are incredibly important, and I would want to drive people to book. But at the end of the day, it's about learning and trying to improve yourself as much as possible. And I prefer books over the other formats, but you have video, you have podcasts, and I do both of them. I watch TED Talks, I listen to podcasts. For me, the most important aspect is the learning component. And this is very important for a creator. Very, any person in the creative field, if you aren't continuously taking in new information, how on earth can you, how can you expect them to produce novel or new ideas? How can you expect to actually be creative? You can't be creative unless you're continuously learning. Um, they always say in Silicon Valley, you need to optimize for learning. So everything you need to do, the final outcome needs to be you need to have learned something.
Yes.
Learn something to take your company to the next phase. And the same applies, I believe, for creatives as well. There's extreme when you create a new design for a website, there's a lot of uncertainty as to is this going to be good or not. But if you need to understand how you can learn from that. So I think the learning aspect is very important. I read a lot, obviously. We're currently reading Ego is the Enemy and Rise of Superman. Two brilliant books, Ryan Holiday, fantastic author. Those are the books we're reading now. And I mean, the amount we're learning from that, we're reading as a team, and the amount we learn from that, and the amount that helps us move forward is incredible. So learning for me is the ultimate. I mean, that's why I'm in EdTech. That's why I'm in education. I think it's the
Exactly.
most important thing a person can do is look after your health and continue learning. That is imperative.
So I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's why we're creating this content. That's why we're trying to inspire people, is to move everybody just to the next phase on what they're supposed to do. I didn't say it a moment ago when you mentioned it, but I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think formalized education is outdated, irrelevant, inaccessible for most of us. And I think that informal learning through digital means has become not just plan B for a lot of people that's making change in the world. It is the preferred way of learning, no matter if you're 18 or 80 years old. And I think you are the living, breathing example of that, of being able to pivot your career, try something completely new, educate yourself on YouTube, and then build something that can become commercially viable and actually give people jobs and change lives and make a positive difference in the world. I mean, that's phenomenal. So kudos to that. Speaking about learning, there's a difference between being educated and learning and developing a skill and staying inspired and energized. So here's my question. If books, YouTube videos, all kinds of other forms of information is how you learn, how you develop new skills, what inspires you? What keeps you energized to keep doing the work?
This is a very interesting question. Actually, I had a conversation with my ex-co the other day. We're actually on the roof drinking a whiskey, toasting a new milestone we reached, and we actually asked each other the question, almost that exact question. And I don't want to keep referencing books, but in Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday actually talks about the difference between passion and purpose.
Yeah.
Where I'm not going to spoil it. I'll rather say go read the book. It's very, very informative. But for me, what it comes down to is the purpose aspect of what he talks about. And, in all honesty, a long time ago, I thought, I'm doing what I do because I want to help millions of people. And I do, through and through. But I started digging deeper and deeper and deeper to try and understand why. And a big thing I've come to realize is learning is to try and understand as much as possible about as many concepts as possible. Or what I mean by that is my biggest purpose right now is actually to understand how to take any idea and turn it into a commercially scalable, viable business that can actually help move people across the world. That for me is the most important thing, is learning how functions of ideas work, or how ideas grow, and how ideas evolve. So in terms of energy, it's very weird because I sometimes struggle to explain it. Why do you get up? Why do you do what you do? I've had many fights with many people about working too many hours and stuff like that. And it's difficult to describe, but a really interesting for me is when people say you need to switch off, or you need to take a break, or you can't work on weekends. And I always want to tell them, well, you don't understand what it's like for me. I enjoy it. So for me, working on a Saturday or working till 9 at night, it's not, I'm not going to burn out. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So it's really and it's something I really, really enjoy doing. So it's not that I need energy to do it because I enjoy it. I think if you require energy, to keep yourself motivated to do something, then you're probably not doing the thing you should be doing. So you need to go find out what your actual purpose is. What's going to give you energy? And that's the difference. It's not, I don't need energy to do it. Doing it gives me energy. That's very, very important. And I think if at the moment you're sitting in a place where you feel you need energy to go to work, or it's sapping your energy, or you can't wait for the break, or you can't wait for the weekend, then you're not doing what you enjoy. You're not doing what you should be doing. And you need to seriously go and reassess that, because you don't want to look back. You don't want to look back on your life and think, I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I could have been doing what I actually enjoyed doing. That's one of my biggest fears, actually. And so a big thing for me is just you need to find what gives you energy and not what takes energy. And for me, doing, Bookt gives me energy. But the process of entrepreneurship, the process of learning, the process of improving, that gives me energy. It doesn't take energy. So I don't necessarily need to start with a full reserve. I can start with an empty tank, and by the end of the day, I'll have a full reserve.
It just fills you up. That makes sense. I mean, what is the alternative? The alternative is not sustainable. Is to try and pull energy from somewhere else, keep depositing it down this dark hole of work, and try and just hope that the two balance out at the end of the day, which they seldom do, right? So to try and make up for the energy that your work is taking by the energy that a hobby, or I don't know what else, like something else is giving you, or rather the rest is giving you. At the end of the day, work should be, and what you do, and not just work, because I like how you differentiate between building Bookt and investing in business and entrepreneurship, how the one can be exhausting, but the other one brings joy and brings energy, and the difference between those two, that you should be invested in something that brings energy, not just takes it on a daily basis. I love that. So I think one quick last question to you, Louis, before we go. And you've talked about a lot of things. You've talked about making peace with the gray areas, actually living in the gray areas, which I love. How suffering is both the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for growth. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I love the fact that how learning is pivotal. It's the key to creating the future, and how making your purpose and your passion your main point where energy comes from. Here's my one last question. On top of all those things, what's your advice for people that are either looking for a way to creatively impact the world in a positive way, people looking to take the next step, people that are potentially know what they should do, but they don't necessarily have the courage to do it, or whoever it might be that's listening? What's your advice? If you had to pick from any of those, what would you tell the world?
I think for me, one of the most important things I've come to realize is understanding yourself, self-awareness. That's the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do, was be honest with myself. That journey of self-awareness and self-reflection is extremely taxing. It's difficult, but it's the most important thing you can do in your life. I have no doubt about it. Carl Jung talks about the concept of your shadow, or a shadow, which is essentially that aspect of yourself, your unconscious, that you're not aware of, that developed or is there as a result of your upbringing, your childhood. What behaviors, or what wasn't allowed. What weren't you, were you in a loveless household? Were you in a place where there was always anger? You would repress parts of yourself into that, call it shadow, or that unconscious side of you, that if you don't actually understand that and get to a point where you can come face to face with it and realize it and become, a full person, you're going to have at 40, 50, this was his theory at least, that you'll look back and actually that's when the midlife crisis comes. Is who am I actually? Who is this person? So my biggest piece of advice is, before you set out on all of this stuff, start the journey of understanding yourself, self-reflection, and start becoming self-aware, because that's the only way you'll actually come to realize or come to find what your purpose is and what gives you energy. When I was younger, I thought, well, money would give me energy, or this would give me energy, or that would give me energy. None of that is true. And the only way you actually figure that out is through this journey of self-reflection, journaling, meditation, being honest with yourself, sitting in a quiet room and not being distracted all the time. It's something I struggled with immensely. But if you just are consciously aware of the fact that you need to find out who you are, what gives you energy, and what your purpose is, that's the very, very first thing I would do. And that's the biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone, is go through that. It's a very difficult one, but start sooner rather than later.
Louis, thanks so much. That is super wise, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everything you've shared on the show. What we're going to be doing is we'll share all your contact details, not everything. We'll share how people can become part of Bookt down below, how people can engage with you on some of the online platforms where you are available. And I think what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to link some of the books that you shared today. If it's not just for me to go and look them up, at least for somebody else that were inspired by what you said to go and find those books on Bookt, right? And just read it there and read along with other people. You'll also find me on Bookt if you want to come and find me and read what I'm reading. Guys are more than welcome. But Louis, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for all the effort, and it was great having a chat.